Welcome to HSM 410, and today we'll be discussing cognitive science and cognitive informatics. Per usual, we have a couple of learning objectives. By the end of the class, you should be able to describe what cognitive science is and how it relates to the knowledge sources of knowledge. You should also be able to discuss how knowledge and wisdom are used in decision making, particularly in the healthcare profession, and then finally be able to describe cognitive informatics and its various uses in the healthcare practice. So, starting with the first learning objective, I will be talking about cognitive science. So, what is cognitive science? So it's an interdisciplinary field that is kind of more, it's focused on studying the mind and how information is processed in the mind. So it kind of looks at the multifaceted ways that human performance happens and tries to model that complicated performance. And it does it by kind of scaffolding in scaffolding when it's analyzing information. So if this sounds like a whole bunch of words that do not make sense to you, to summarize it or to kind of simplify it, just see it as cognitive science is basically all about making sure that the end user of healthcare products or healthcare services is done the way it's meant to. So it kind of looks at how the multifaceted human performance is trying to analyze information, making sure that at the end of the day, the end user gets the best care that it can get. So let's use, for example, say the end user is a clinician. So cognitive science in this case will be concerned about how to enhance the clinician's performance in the clinical setting and in a situation whereby the clinician's patient is the end user. Cognitive science will be concerned about enhancing their clinical experience with getting healthcare from the clinician. So, the end of the day, cognitive science tries to improve the experience of the end user. Cognitive science can enhance the implementation and integration of the technologies that facilitate healthcare work. So, healthcare professional is working with a lot of technology. So, cognitive science tries to make sure that those technological tools are implemented in a way that it truly facilitates healthcare work, and if there are multiple technologies, making sure that the integration happens smoothly in a way that doesn't hinder healthcare work. So the ultimate goal of cognitive science in healthcare is to improve the patient care delivery. So that's the longest short of it, is that cognitive science wants to improve healthcare delivery, and in order to do that, all the levels of healthcare practice, we need to be it aims to do that by understanding the nature of knowledge, by understanding the information and knowledge that is needed in whatever situation or context that it is, and the means by which healthcare professionals will be able to process said information and knowledge within the situational context that they are in. So that is what cognitive science is interested in. So, but cognitive science, like we said, kind of is interested in sources of knowledge. But let's also talk about the nature of knowledge. So, knowledge is kind of seen as, the awareness or understanding of a set of information, and this includes latent information or manifest information that we spoke about in the last module. Um, it also looks at the ways in which information can be made useful, to support whatever specific task or whatever decision making that needs to be done within the time. So it looks at also how information is synthesized, so that relationships between different situations can be identified and formalized. So if you guys will remember this foundation of knowledge module from last module, sorry, foundation of knowledge model from the last module, where we talked about knowledge acquisition, knowledge dissemination, knowledge generation, knowledge processing. All of this looks at, the nature of knowledge. So, kind of remember, what we said in the last module to try and of connecting what we mean by nature of knowledge. So, cognitive science is also interested in trying to figure out how people come to know what they know about themselves, what they know about others, what they know about their world, or what they know about other people's world. And there are a couple of theories that has been used to try to answer this question. We have empiricism. I can never get this pronunciation. My apologies. Empiricisms, which is knowledge. This theory is kind of interested in that knowledge is derived from experiences or one's senses. Then we have rationalism, which theory is kind of more into the sum of our knowledge is derived from reason alone, and that reason plays an important role in the acquisition of our knowledge. So those two branches is kind of looking at how we make sense of the world. So there have been other theories or other ways of understanding where the sources of knowledge come from. We have instincts, and instincts is basically trying to look at how one reacts without reason. An example would be the reflex action of dodging. If an object is flying towards you, or you think an object is flying towards you, sometimes it may not be happening, but you have that reflex action that just kind of kicks into gear. And then we have reason. Reason is kind of, interested in collecting facts, in generalizing facts, and it looks into how we go from cause to effects, how we go from effects to cause, or how we go from premise to conclusion, or proposition to proof. So that is kind of the domain of reason. And then we have intuition. So intuition, and this is a quotation from Aristotle actually, it says, is a leap of understanding, a grasping of a larger concept, unreachable by other intellectual means, yet fundamentally an intellectual process. So I'm going to give an example of how intuition kind of happened to be. So this was many, 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 many moons ago. I have an elder sister who is like 2 years older than me, and she married very young. She was like 20 at the 21 at the time, and I was around 19. So, and this was back when I lived at home in Nigeria. I was still living with my parents at that time. So where we lived was we had lived in this really big house, and there was some distance between the house and the gate entry, the entrance gate. So, and I was at the balcony one day, and I saw the entry gate open, and my sister started walking in, and for some reason, I just thought she's pregnant. And the closer she walked to the house, the more sure, the more strong the intuition was for me that she was pregnant. And once she came into the house, she came upstairs. I asked her, "Are you pregnant?" And she said, "How did you know?" Until today, I can't explain how I knew she was pregnant. At this time, I was going through my atheism phase. So it wasn't a thing of, saying some kind of religious experience or anything like that. It just happens. So that is an example of intuition. It's not any less, it's not lower in the hierarchy of knowledge than there's just, for example, reason, or for example, instinct. So just to give you an example of intuition and how that happened to me. So there are other ways that sources of information has been, sorry, sources of knowledge has been theorized. You have perception. Perception is more focused on how we are acquiring knowledge from the senses, how we are obtaining information, interpreting and selecting or organizing sensory information from seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling. So that's perception. And then we have logic. So logic kind of around the same domain as reason. It is, this science deals with the principles and criteria of validity of inferences, of demonstration. It's kind of requires reason action to make valid inferences. So all of this, all the ways that we think about sources of knowledge. So no matter what you believe to be knowledge that is valid or not, or where you think knowledge is being acquired, what's important is that you should be able to explain and describe what those beliefs are. You should be able to clearly communicate your thoughts and being able to express knowledge, and be interested in enhancing shared understanding of knowledge, and also always be willing to discover nature of knowledge. That's what is most important. So going to learning objectives 2, where we're going to talk about decision making with wisdom and knowledge. So in the last module, we looked at how quality data gives us quality information, and so the whole purpose of having quality data, of collecting and building data, using data to transform it into information, and trying to acquire knowledge, is so that at the end of the day, we are able to make informed, judicious, prudent, and intelligent decisions. And we've talked about knowledge, we've talked about information, we've talked about data. So now we talk about wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom is basically the application of knowledge in a practical way, or the translation of knowledge into action. It is the use of knowledge and experience to heighten common senses and insights, to kind of exercise sound judgment in practical matters. So it's the ability to apply valuable and viable knowledge, experiences, the understanding, while being prudent and sensible. So to kind of put it in a nutshell, is an appropriate use of knowledge to solve human problems, or knowing when or how to appropriately use knowledge. That is, what we think about when we're thinking about knowledge. So, and within decision making, remember we're talking about, applying knowledge, using the use of knowledge and wisdom in decision making. It's important to understand that decision making is kind of an output of cognition, or an outcome of our intellectual processing. And decision making, what the whole process is in, it revolves around knowledge and wisdom, and decision making when it comes to cognitive informatics is all about understanding the nature of knowledge, how it evolves into wisdom, so that at the end of the day it aids in conception, the build and implementation of informatics tools, which we'll talk about in the next learning objectives. And these tools can then enhance and mimic the mind's processes to facilitate decision making, and to improve job performance, which, remember, the end goal of cognitive science is such that the end user, their experience of healthcare delivery, it is enhanced and improved. So that's where decision making really comes into play when we're talking about cognitive informatics or cognitive science. So, with the third learning objectives, this is where we talk about cognitive informatics, which I have mentioned. So, if you're wondering what is cognitive informatics, so cognitive informatics is described is more of an emerging transdisciplinary field of study, and what it aims to do is to bridge the gap of understanding how information is processed in the mind, and how it's processed in computers. And the way it does this is by systematically exploring the mechanism of the brain and the mind, and exploring specifically how information is acquired, how it is represented, how it's remembered, how it's retrieved, how it's generated, and how it is communicated. The end goal is that cognitive informatics uses informatics and computer techniques to investigate cognitive science problems, um, in terms of memory, learning, reasoning, and it uses cognitive theories to investigate the problems in informatics, such as problems in computing and problems in um, software engineering. To kind of illustrate what I mean by this, the idea of the science of cognitive informatics grew out of artificial intelligence. And so cognitive informatics is basically trying to get the machine to perform the way a human brain would. So it's kind of developing computer programs that mimic the information processing and knowledge generation functions that happens in the human brain. So, how has cognitive informatics been used in healthcare practice? So, our job as healthcare professionals, as we go about our jobs, is to, one of the things that we have to be concerned about, depending on situational context, is that we need to be able to first recognize when there's a problem to be solved, and we need to be able to identify the nature of the problem and be able to pull information from knowledge that has been stored, that is relevant to the problem, kind of retrieving the information that's been stored in your memories, but retrieving the informations, that the ones that are relevant to the problem, not just any information, or not just any knowledge, and coming to a decision on the action to take in order to solve the problem, implementing said plan, and at the end of the day, evaluating the effectiveness of the plan or the effectiveness of the intervention. So, as you can imagine, there's a lot of knowledge generation, knowledge retrieval, knowledge dissemination, and knowledge acquisition that is happening in this example that I've just shown you. So, how does informatics work in action? How does that work? So, what cognitive informatics does is it helps in understanding, describing, and predicting the nature of clinical work activities. And it does this by supporting the building of engineering and computing solutions that can improve clinical practice, particularly the decision support systems. And it does help in, it comes into play when it comes to developing patient engagement tools, which we'll talk about in a bit. And it does help in supporting public health interventions, like mobile applications to trace the spread of disease. So I have included an journal article here that talked about how a mobile application was used in contact tracing. When Ebola happened, this was back in 2000. It was a while ago, I think 2014 or thereabout. No, it's been 2016, 2017. There, around that period, I was in Nigeria at the time Ebola happened. And if any of you would remember, or you maybe you don't, Ebola was more or less like raging through West Africa, and Nigeria is the most populous country in West Africa with about 140 million people. So there was a great concern about what was going to happen if Ebola gets to Nigeria because of the large population of people and what that would mean in terms of people getting infected and people potentially dying, because at this time, if you got Ebola, you were sure that you were going to die from it. So there was a lot of concern about what was going to happen should Ebola come to Nigeria. But somehow, and this is, I don't have this experience very often, the Nigerian government really, really acted very well with the Center of Disease Control in Nigeria. They were able to come up with this contact tracing app, and more or less, like, there's a little bit of preparation that was going on before the first case of Ebola happened in Nigeria. But when it did, and the first case was in Lagos, which was where I lived at the time, and it actually happened in the hospital that I used to go to. And when that happened, the Nigerian government, one of the very few times that I've, been proud of it, the Nigerian government, was really able to step in and, get the Ebola task force going, and it was able to control what happened with Ebola in West Africa. And at this time, there was serious concern about what was going to happen, like I said, but there were some fatality and there were some, infection, but it was not at the magnitude that had been predicted that was going to happen if it came to Nigeria, because, like I said, Nigeria is a very, very populous country. So imagine if we did not have cognitive informatics tools at the time that Ebola happened, and what that would have done to our public health intervention. The great thing that happened was that the structure that was built for the Ebola contact tracing was actually used for COVID-19. When COVID-19 came to Nigeria, those structures were already in place with Ebola contact tracing, so it was used with COVID-19. There was no need to create a new system all over again, because it had already been successfully used with Ebola. So there was some kind of effectiveness study to show that this could, become handy with COVID-19. So it was deployed for COVID-19. So some of the ways in which we have used cognitive informatics in healthcare is artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is a field that deals with the conception, development, and implementation of informatics tools based on intelligent technologies. So this field kind of tries to capture processes of human thought and intelligence. It's more or less like trying to get machines that behave like the human brain. So that's basically what artificial intelligence is. I know we kind of talk about it in a negative way. I remember when ChatGTP came, there was so much panic that happened on Twitter at the time, and there were people who were like more or less like running around with their hands in the air, the end of the world, the end of the world. So while AI is often being depicted in not such a great way, especially in pop culture, AI actually is something that's been very useful in healthcare. And an example would be the way AI algorithm has been shown to be performing on par or better than humans in various tasks in healthcare. For example, in analyzing medical images and correlating symptoms and biomarkers from electronic medical records, and helping with the prognosis of the diseases. Another way that we have used cognitive informatics in healthcare would be machine learning. So machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence, but it's kind of focused on mining vast amounts of data from various sources to identify patterns and make predictions about the data or decisions without any human intervention whatsoever. So it's kind of in the area of predictive data analysis. I have included a link to a study about it in case you're interested, and also preventive data analysis. So this is where machine learning comes very handy. You may also come across deep learning as well. This is all within the field of machine learning. So an example would be the use of mobile apps that uses machine learning algorithm to find trends in data make better predictions and kind of give personalized treatment advice. So that is that for today's class. Please remember to use the Q&A board if you have any questions about anything that's been covered in this class or as it relates to your any of your assignments. Do have a lovely day. Bye.